Beautiful, ain't it?
What is?
All of it. Every bit of it. This is rough work, gentlemen. Not just on the body. We just cut down trees that have been here for 500 years.
I've loved Dennis Johnson's writing for a long time, and really been a fan of his. And then at the center of it is the story of Robert Grenier, who, again, it was Dennis Johnson took this small life, somebody who doesn't even leave an impact on the world after he's gone, and yet shows the magnificence of his experience here. And I wanted to do that and wanted to pull that into a film. And then on top of it, it seemed to have so much cinematic potential to it. It's got a love story within it, and there's logging, and there's violence, and there's all these different things. And then finally, it felt like just something that it felt like a story that was so resonant to what we're going through today, even though it was told in the past. And I think whenever I always get a kick out of like finding stories like that, there's something very, I don't know, like there's something that gives a good perspective on life, I think, when you find stories of people who've been going through some of the similar things that we're going through, just in another time. Everything that you see that he does in the movie is I think, proof better than whatever I can say in terms of why he's so perfect for it. But I've always been a fan of his for a very long time, and just looked up to him as an actor and as a storyteller and as a filmmaker. But he has this unique ability to be able to do so much with so little. You believe that he has rough hands from being a logger and that he could fell trees, but then you also believe that he has the tenderness to burp a baby. And I think like his ability to be so tough and masculine, but also so sweet and tender, and also just what he can do with just his eyes is the subtlety of his performances is really phenomenal, I think, and really, really hard to do. I can only have the space as a filmmaker to give the film that space and that quietness because of what he can do, and because of what he's giving with just a look. There were a couple of moments in the film that had voiceover written on them. One moment is he's sitting by a lake and he's kind of reflecting on his own aging without giving anything away, and it had voiceover all over it, and the scene wasn't working really. And we found that when we just stripped out the voiceover and just sat with Joel, the scene suddenly came to life for the audience, and I think that's a good example of his power as an actor. We had a lot of conversations early on. We had the benefit of casting Joel, many months before we started filming, as we were pulling the rest of the cast in, and then prepping and finding locations, all these things. And so I had a lot of time with Joel just to talk about not only the character and things about the movie, but also, being married and having children and getting older and things like this. We would just have a lot of long conversations, and that really not only opened up things about life for me, but also opened up a lot about the film. And I like to, as a filmmaker, before going into a scene, have those conversations early, whether it's between just me and Joel, or me and Joel and Felicity, or me and Joel and Bill Macy, who's ever in the scene, or Carrie Condon, that then by the time we get on set, we kind of know what we're supposed to be doing, and then we can just be open to solving technical problems or being open to whatever magic is coming through. That then, you can kind of follow the film of wherever it wants to lead you because you've had these bigger conversations earlier on. It seemed like on this one that we got lucky where, we got very lucky where I just thought about some of my favorite actors in the world, and then they said yes. But a big part of that, I think, was Avi Kaufman was our casting director, and she is so so well respected in the community that it carries a lot for an actor to just take the project seriously by seeing her name on it, and then they can fall in love with the script. Because that's the hardest thing when you don't know somebody, is trying to get to them. And AV helped, find people who felt right for the story, but then also would bring something very special to it, and that was outside of even beyond what was there. Felicity and Joel had been wanting to work together for a very long time, and she fell in love with the script, and then helped in coming onto it. She helped really expand the character of Gladys, and bring a lot of depth to that character. Carrie Condon had been old friends with Joel, and they had worked together back in the early days. And so it was not hard then for them to be on set in a scene where they're supposed to feel like, friends from another life, for that to come across. And then Bill Macy is just like one of those dream actors that you hope. I grew up watching his films, and I remember being, a kid watching Fargo and Magnolia, and like thinking, man, one day it would be so lovely to work with him. He brought something, I think. That character of Arn Peoples is already larger than life in the book. And he's only in like 2 or 3 pages in the book. And so in writing the scripts with my co-writer Greg, we expanded that character. But he's a very delicate character where he could fall into, I think, cliche fairly easily. And what Bill did is he brought groundedness to him without losing that larger-than-life personality. And I think that was a really, it was just a lovely thing to see, is how he was able to do that. Somebody said something about him the other day that I'll butcher the way that they say it, but basically like he's somebody who is larger than life and yet completely believable. And I think Felicity as Gladys not only animates his life and really is the thing that gets his life going, and gives it purpose and meaning, but then also I think what Felicity does that is so amazing, and I think a testament to her skill and depth as an actor, is her presence ripples across the film even after she's gone, and she's still animating the film even after, without spoiling it, what happens to her character. The way I talked about it early on was, if Grenier is the soul of the film, then she's the heart of the film. In a more traditional story, it would go, or in a lot of stories, it would go another direction. But I really was, in thinking about that character, wanted to show this relationship that I think a lot of us have from time to time, where you meet somebody at a wedding or on vacation, and you have an amazing day or 2 days with this person, and you really connect on a deep level, and it kind of changes your life or your view on the world. And then a lot of times you don't keep in contact after that, and yet that relationship is one of the things that comes to like define your life and kick it in another direction. And it felt like it would be more resonant if the relationship stayed, I'm trying to think how to say it without spoiling it, but if the relationship stayed on that trajectory versus turning into something a bit more expected. And there's also something too, I think, of like, what's important about his life and what happens with Robert after that is that he doesn't get an easy way out, and there's something else waiting on him that's a bit even more unexpected than that. In terms of like what I think, speaking on behalf of myself and Greg, who we wrote both Sing Sing and this together, I think one thing that I learned from that process that I wanted to pull into Train Dreams was there were a lot of moments within Sing Sing that came from just like a sentence in the screenplay. And there was a lot of space left in the screenplay of Sing Sing to then, when you got on set with the actors and with the crew, to create something that everybody could kind of create together beyond like one person's imagination or two people's imagination. And so even within this, and it was tough because we're making a period film with Train Dreams and you know, very limited time, very limited budget. But still I wanted to like keep space for just unexpected magic to come into the process. And so that was one thing that I learned that I'm happy that we were able to do. And some of the like my favorite moments in the film and moments that people really respond to in Train Dreams were, you know, not scripted or came up just from conversations with Joel or Felicity. And then, yeah, the process of adapting the book was one where, again, I have great reverence for Dennis Johnson's writing and this book in particular. And I wanted to make sure that we were loyal to the spirit of the book while also releasing ourselves in the writing from anything that's from a lot of the particulars and allowing the movie to become its own thing and its own art form, you know. That is, I think there are a lot of amazing things that literature does well that don't translate into cinema, and a lot of things that you can do well in cinema that you can't necessarily do in literature. And so there's a lot of examples of that along the way of just trying to make sure that the film could become its own thing and the script could become its own thing without betraying the spirit of the novella. Working with Adolfo Veloso, our DP, we're shooting a lot at like trying to cram as much into magic hour as possible, and so we're trying to get to the heart of a scene, and then explore what else could be there, and then if there's any little moment left at the end of the day, we try and just do something there, and sometimes that takes the form of there's a moment where Joel and Felicity as Robert and Gladys are cooking together. And that was not something that was scripted. It was just we had a few minutes left before we wrapped a scene early. We had a few minutes left, and we hadn't shot anything in that part of the cabin. And so we just put something together real quick and decided to like have a moment of them cooking together. We didn't know what they would say, but it became this moment of as like I'm throwing lines to Joel and Felicity, and they're kind of riffing on those things and coming up with their own things, and Adolfo's capturing it. It became this moment of them just catching up over kind of trivialities after him being away for a long time and them being apart for a long time. And I was clear with everybody that like, I don't know if we'll use this or not, but it's something nice. At the very least, it's an acting exercise for them to find their characters a bit more. And then what we found, once I got into the edit with our editor, Parker Laramie, was we needed some moments to like solidify them as a couple when he comes back, and it just worked perfectly for the audience to give them this kind of mundane moment but that's like a moment of connection as they're kind of like, you know, reestablishing their connection after a long time apart. And there's just so many of those across the movie, little ones like where we would, you know, just have a minute and go with Joel and the 2-year-old off to the side to like shoot something as the sun's going down, and then she hands him what she says is an egg, but it's actually like some sort of animal poop, and it just becomes this very sweet moment between Robert and Kate. Yeah, the film is full of those, and I think they come out of a sense of setting up an atmosphere and a space where I don't know, where beauty can come to life. It's like being in a band, and I'm trying as a director to find space to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction, and we're all playing the same song, but give space for people to improvise within that and come up with things really in service of the movie coming to life. Because you're trying, at the end of the day, I want to give something to the audience that feels alive to them and feels like they can kind of immerse themselves into and lose themselves in. And that's so hard when you've got to schedule everything down to the minute on a film, and we've got to be in this location, and we've done our blocking, and we've got to figure out, you know, how to say these lines that were written 2 years ago and say them over here by the window, blah, blah, blah. And you just want to find ways for it not to feel dead and for it to really come to life. And so it's all in service of that, whatever like tricks you can do along the way. I'm feel very lucky to work with Adolfo, and I find that a lot of my style as a director comes from working with him and comes from collaborating with him, because what I was talking about of trying to find that space to follow whatever moment is coming up and improvising a moment, like having a moment with Joel and Felicity improvising, feeding some chickens, you know, and just like letting some chickens loose and kind of following the moment around, or being locked off into a dialogue scene and finding some other space where the scene can go. I think having Adolfo be somebody who can follow those moments and not lose a level of quality that I'm just always astounded by the images that he can get. And a big part of that is, you know, we try and make sure we shoot in natural light as much as possible so that we can move through a surrounding without having to worry about like, oh, we're going to hit a C stand over here. And ultimately, I think it comes down to being in service of giving the actors space to where they feel like they can bring a scene to life without feeling too constrained in, and Adolfo's brilliant at that. This is my second time working with Bryce after Jockey, and I don't know, I find that his music's so special, and I find that it's the thing that kind of glues everything together in the end, and really like lifts the film up a bit. But he's, you know, I find it hard to like not just gush over him because he writes classical music and is classically trained, but then also has a very modern sensibility and, you know, writes for the National as well and plays in the National. We have a lot of trust between the two of us. And so he started writing very early on just based on footage I was sending him. And like sending him just a long string out of shots or sending him like early versions of scenes. And he would start composing and then even recording, and then would send things over. And then editing with Parker, we would like then shape sequences to things he was sending over. So it was a very collaborative process back and forth that I think really helped. You know, the music was bringing the film to life, and the film was bringing the music to life, and they were both lifting each other up, and there were even sequences. He just wrote things that he was feeling and sent them over, and then Parker and I were like, oh, we've got to cut something to that piece because it's just too good. Well, we shot the film in 29 days on location in Washington State, so there was a lot that was tough. I think the one that was the biggest challenge that I knew it would be a challenge was, and it turned out to be true, was the big forest fire sequence. I had never done much with VFX before doing this, or special effects at all. And then that sequence is something where it's a scene where we're shooting in a real location in a forest that had been wiped out by a forest fire, and it's very highly choreographed of the journey that Joel's character is going on, that Robert's going on in this scene. It's a combination of special effects on set with, you know, we're pumping smoke in and we're pumping ashes and embers in. We've got real fires lit on set, combined with VFX building out those fires. Because you know, no matter how much money you had in the world, you wouldn't be able to light, you know, an entire forest on fire. And so trying to find a way to combine all those elements together where they feel of a whole, while also telling an emotional arc within that sequence, this man trying to get somewhere that he's not going to be able to get to was really tough, but I'm very proud of how it turned out because of having like so many amazing departments supporting that sequence. It is a film that could, I remember struggling with this on Jockey as well and realizing this of like, you turn it a little bit that way and it's just a really depressing film, or you turn it a little bit that way and it's very treacly. And it's really a high wire act. And I think a big part of that is just always coming back to the central character and the journey that he's going on, and trying to be as realistic and straight ahead as possible. And then it's just like a lot of little things along the way in terms of choosing the performances, choosing how the tone of the music and how it's going to sound. What is the like color treatment even on the end when we get into color correction? So like, it's a hard thing to articulate because I find that it's just 1,000 little decisions along the way that end up like kind of getting you in the right place. I'd say if it's anything, going back to what we started talking about, was I wanted to make a film that would give people space, space to think and breathe and experience something and go on a journey. And in the end, I think what I'm hearing from a lot of people is that they leave the film with a bit more appreciation for their own lives and seeing the magic in the everyday. And that's not a bad thing, I think, to leave somebody with.